Welcome to Elizabeth Reads. We have Being Miss Nobody. We are on chapter 3. Tell me about yourself. After a year and a half of saying nothing at all ever to Dr. Peak Not Peak, he decided he couldn't help me anymore, and he referred me to a different therapist. And I was half massively relieved I wouldn't have to sit in his office surrounded by the awkward silence anymore, and half totally scared about meeting someone new. He told me to write something about myself and my family for my new therapist while he had a meeting with my parents. So I sat on a plastic chair outside his office and opened my yellow notebook for the last time. My house is number 3 Byron Hill. All the streets in my area are named after famous poets. There's Rossetti Drive, Shelley Close, Tennyson Street, Coleridge Avenue, and Clare Street. Our area is an okay area for the town where we live, which means it could be a lot better, but it could also be a lot worse. The main news at my house isn't me, it's Seb. He's my brilliant little brother, and he's dying. He's not dying quickly like what happens if you get certain diseases. He's dying really slowly. Because we found out ages ago, and he's had 4 rounds of chemotherapy now, but he's still not getting any better. I can't be very good at therapy either, because I've had 17 sessions with Dr. Peak, and I'm still only speaking to about 0.000000001% of the world's population. When we first found out Seb was ill, Mum wanted to move house. She said she wanted us to live somewhere nicer where trees are planted in the pavement and people say hello to you when you walk past. But when I asked Dad if we were going to move, he said, "The problem is we had children the wrong side of the financial crisis." And when I looked confused, he said, "Put it this way. If we moved somewhere more expensive, we would have to start cutting back on luxuries, such as wearing clothes and eating food." Mom always says, even though Seb's really poorly, there's still every reason to hope he will get better. But last week, I overheard Dad say, we have to prepare for the worst. So I'm not exactly sure what to think. Some days Seb seems okay, and some days he's too ill to do anything apart from sleep. And some days he's like a normal 8-year-old boy, apart from his personality. Anyway, whatever happens, I'm massively glad I don't have strangers saying hello to me all the time. Seb doesn't go to school anymore because of all the germs, but he's still brainier than anyone I know. He has a special tutor called Brian, but Seb calls him Brain because he is really clever, but also because it's an anagram. Brain tested Seb's IQ when he first started tutoring him and said it was a lot higher than normal. One of Dad's all-time favorite sayings since then is, "This family just doesn't do normal," which I agree must be true, but I'm still not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. As well as being able to memorize really hard things like the names of loads of astronauts, star constellations, and every dinosaur that existed, Seb's obsessed with poo. He kind of already was, but when his medicine started giving him diarrhea all the time, he called himself a pooper hero. And since then, he makes at least one poo joke a day. It's like even though he is way cleverer than normal, the age part of his brain is way younger than normal. He's also way happier than normal too. He never seems to get sad even though he's dying, which is kind of the exact opposite to me, because I definitely feel sad a lot of the time and I hardly ever get ill. Even though I can speak normally at home, I have to be careful around Seb not to mention his illness. He knows he is ill, but I'm not supposed to bring it up in conversation unless he does. Once I asked Mom if she would have another baby if Seb dies, and she got really upset, and I wished that I hadn't said it, because she didn't stop crying for ages. Since then, I try not to mention it. If Seb dies, I will be an only child, and then I will really have no friends. We don't have much extra money because Mom quit her job to look after Seb, but we're saving up to go on a family holiday. We're going to Egypt because seeing the pyramids would be Seb's dream come true. He's a little bit obsessed with pharaohs, and last time he was in the hospital, he asked the nurses for bandages so he could mummify his toy dinosaurs. He made a wig out of tinfoil, makes everyone call him Pharaoh Pookamen anytime he wears it, which is a lot. Ages ago, Mum wrote to this charity that gives you a dream come true if you're dying, but they can't afford to give everyone a great dream come true, so we can't count on it. That's why all our spare money goes into Seb's holiday fund, and that's the reason I don't get pocket money because I want it to go to Seb's dream. I'm looking forward to going to a country where everyone speaks a different language because no one will expect me to talk to them. Since we found out that Seb's got the illness, our house is only happy at certain times, like when Seb's around, then at other times everyone gets really upset, like last week when Seb had to stay in hospital again and Mum wouldn't stop crying. And other times I feel like something bad is happening, but my parents kind of pretend it isn't. but I know it's definitely happening because the silence feels weird. If my house had to be a color, sometimes it would be sunshine orange and sometimes it would be rain cloud gray. That's why I like going next door to Mrs. Quinney's, because although her house isn't exactly really happy, it's always the same no matter what. And the silence in her house isn't the scary kind. What with Seb's hospital visits and Dad working extra hours, I end up going to Mrs. Quinney's house a lot. One of the reasons I love Mrs. Quinney is because she's one of the few people on planet Earth I've always been able to speak to. She's half battle axe, half fruitcake, according to my dad, and she lets her cats, Mary and Bernard, launch their bum rockets in our garden, according to Seb. But Mum appreciates what she calls Mrs. Quinney's Victorian finishing school. Mrs. Quinney calls it etiquette. She's taught me how to correctly lay a table, how to sew people's initials onto a handkerchief, and I can balance 3 books on my head and walk around her living room, which is called posture, and it's important in case you ever want to get married. Dad wishes I didn't have to go there so much because last Christmas he asked me what I wanted from Santa, and I said, peace on earth. Then Dad said he was going to have a word with Mrs. Quinney about brainwashing me. But Mum said she can speak normally there, and Mrs. Quinney loves her. I'm sure she must get lonely. It won't do Rosie any harm to learn a bit about God. And Dad said, fine, but when she comes back wanting to be a nun, I'll blame you. For the record, I only ever wanted to become a nun for about 2 days when Mrs. Quinney told me they can take a vow of silence and then they don't have to speak to anyone. But when I looked it up in the encyclopedia and found out they have to get up really early and do loads of chores and praying, I changed my mind. Anyway, if I was a nun, I don't think God would like me very much because what I really want more than anything is the exact opposite of a vow of silence, to be able to say whatever I want to everyone. But unfortunately, that's not the sort of dream come true you can save up your pocket money for. One of the best ever things Mrs. Quinney taught me is calligraphy, which is like a special type of handwriting that is actually a form of art. The word calligraphy comes from the Greek language, meaning beautiful writing. I looked it up. Mrs. Quinney has the most perfect handwriting I have ever seen, but her hands are old now, and she says her writing was even better when she was younger. The first thing Mrs. Quinney taught me was how to do swirly letters. You start by practicing the alphabet, which takes literally ages, and then you can move on to short joined-up phrases like this. Hello, friend. I love doing calligraphy because whatever is happening with words in my head, I can always write some down on paper. And since doing calligraphy, I can make them look nice, which is not how they feel in my head most of the time. When I feel worried, which is a lot, I do calligraphy and it helps the panic in my head go away a bit. Anyway, I'm writing all this because Dr. Peak said you are an expert in helping people like me, and I'm really hoping that's true. I need someone to help stop words from getting stuck in my head when I try to speak to people, because even though my dad says being completely normal isn't very good, it still sounds a million times better than being me. See you next time.